it's good to just take a moment and stop and be like, you are more than your work. And burnout is just a symptom of like the systems we have to live in. And I need to remember that.
You are listening to Stitchwish Radio, a podcast for crafting your own magic and threads. I'm your host, textile artist, author, and teacher, Christy Johnson. So, next up in the series of artists included in my upcoming book, The Art of Embroidery Design, which publishes on January 21st, 2025, is embroidery artist Tessa Perlow. First off, hi, I have a bit of a cold as I'm recording this intro, but luckily you don't have to hear me like this throughout the whole episode, just the intro. Anyways, I'm so happy to have Tessa back on the show. We did an interview a few years back on my podcast, but so much has changed, and we talk more about being a public-facing artist and the evolving landscape of social media, and we talk about the push and pull we have with these platforms that both give us the opportunity to share our work far and wide, but they also come with their own troubles, and Tessa gives some great advice for dealing with this kind of like artists need to make money as a working artist and how that can actually help to influence your art in encouraging ways. She shares managing inspiration, how she deals with all of her works in progress, and just the general experience of overflowing from studio into home space and life as an artist in that way. She shares all the ways that you can find her online at the end of the episode, but I highly recommend checking out her YouTube vlogs and videos and also seeing her on Instagram. But her YouTube is just, it's so sweet and it's so cool to get an inside look at an artist's life like that. So before we jump in, just some updates from me and my business. So I'll be brief, but I've taken my 10-week online creative embroidery course, Magic Threads, that I've been teaching for the past 3 years. I've taken that course and chopped it up into tiny bites, so you can choose to just take the creativity and inspiration bits or just the improvisational stitching lessons and really just like get them all at once and gobble them up. But if you've heard of Magic Threads in the past and were interested in how it used to be, if you're really into the idea of having a course that is slow dripped to you over 10 weeks, and this is how it was formed in its initial inception. This is the format that was designed to be an unfolding of personal style through the art of embroidery. So if you're interested in that, be sure to keep an eye out for me. For an email from me. It is going to be the last time that I will be offering the 10-week version of this course. And at the 10-week version of the course, it will be at a lower cost than if you bought all the bite-sized courses together. So you're going to want to check that out if you're interested. And also, I'm sort of winding down my online shop because I really don't have a lot of bandwidth to do a whole lot right now. So my Stitch Wish talisman, my little embroidered patches that the show is named after, these will be on sale until they are all sold out. There's only a handful of each. Some of them, there's only like one or two left. A lot of them are already sold out. So if you're interested in grabbing any of those, now is the time. Okay, let's jump into this conversation with Tessa, and you don't have to hear me talking through my stuffed nose anymore.
Hey, Tessa, and welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Christy. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, totally. So, this is your second time on the podcast, which is very exciting. But for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with your work or haven't listened to that, can you just introduce it to us?
Yeah, definitely. I do embroidery art, inspired by magic and nature, and I'll sometimes do upcycled clothing as well. It's kind of a combination of art pieces, upcycled clothes, and then sometimes I'll dabble into other crafts and art mediums, but it's mostly embroidery art and beading.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I love seeing the recent sort of dabbling into other. I mean, I love your embroidery too, obviously, but seeing the
hmm
dabbling.
Yeah, I feel like this year especially, I'm excited to try different things, partly because I feel like I need to offset some repetitive strain that I'm getting from embroidery, like injury in my hand and shoulder. And then also just because I think it helps creatively to try other things, just generally.
So,
Mhm.
how do you decide what other mediums that you're working in? Is it like that you
Mm.
find something and it just speaks to you, or is it more like you have the idea
Oh,
first, or?
yeah, I guess I just kind of let myself go wherever an excitement takes me. And also like I do, sometimes I'm better at being focused than other times. Like right now, I feel like I have a lot of different things going on and there's a lot of unfinished projects, which is always the case, but it feels especially so right now. And I'm very excited about like filet crochet. I honestly don't even
Mm.
know if I'm saying that correct because I feel like I've only read about it. I've never heard people talk about that, but I'm excited about learning filet crochet and also trying to make my own patterns for it.
Ooh.
Um, and I'm taking a
Sketchbook and
painting
idea
class,
journal are
and I
filling up.
decided on
I
that
can't thank you
because
enough.
it's kind of more
Stacy
gentle for
C
my
says,
wrist.
I
Mm.
really needed something
And
to
which I'm sure
ignite my
you
embroidery
relate
practice into
to.
a
I don't
truly
know. Yeah,
creative
I
and
feel like that's
expressive
got to be a
act, and the Magic
conversation.
Threads course did
Like
exactly that.
something just
It took me
happened
from
this
stitching
past
other
year or
people's
last year
patterns
where I'm like,
to
oh wow, I
imagining
can't
and
work the
creating
way
my
I used to
own,
work,
and it unlocked
and
how to create an image
I
in my
feel it in
mind
my
and
body.
translate it into thread.
Yeah.
Um,
Now I can
but
see
yeah, so that
inspiration
I'm
everywhere,
definitely
and I can
curious
bring my
about
own story to my
gentler
work.
forms of art and learning painting, which is it's just exciting and different for me, even though it's challenging since it's like a wet medium and I really love dry mediums. Being someone who's kind of prone to being messy. Um, yeah, and I'm also really trying to, well, I started dabbling in reupholstery and I'm curious about doing stuff in the realm of home decor. But before I really dive into it, I want to kind of clear away a lot of the projects that I have and like use up some supplies I have before I go and like purchase a bunch of new tools and a bunch of new and start bringing chairs in or whatever. But I really want to learn that and then somehow incorporate it with embroidery down the line or beading.
Yeah, that'll be
Yeah,
incredible.
I think it'd be cool. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. You were making those button nymphs a
Yes.
while ago. Are those still part of the project?
I've got a lot. What's funny is I have a ton of unfinished or half finished button nymphs, and they're kind of like these weird stuffed animal creatures or shapes that hang up on the wall. And my partner actually hung up a bunch of the unfinished ones. So they're just plain fabric and then they're stuffed with scraps of fabric and thread. And then my idea was, oh, well, also have like an insane amount of vintage buttons. So this is like helping me use up all of that stuff that's like sitting around too. What do I do with all these buttons? I'll like decorate them on these weird little sculptures, but I haven't gotten around to decorating them, so they're just kind of like sitting on our walls naked along with some of the other button ones. But I
So
do
they're
want to
just like
come.
stuffed animals, these
It
weird
is
stuffed
kind
animal
of,
shapes.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
weird. I would I guess it's good to be reminded of them that they're
Yeah.
up there and I'm like, I want to work on that because it's just like looks like a weird blob on our wall, but it's okay. And we have a few of the finished ones hanging up also. I do want to get back to that. Um, and that is definitely one of those fun projects that felt like playtime, which
Yeah.
I feel like I don't always allow myself to do, but it's important. Um, and I went to, like, now I'm living in Philadelphia. And we went to the Barnes Foundation, which is like a museum. Sometime last year, we went for the first time, even though I've been here, I think 2.5 years. And it's really cool the way it's set up like a house. I guess it's like a historical house, or it's a museum mimicking the historical Barnes house.
Mm.
And then, so all the rooms have all these beautiful paintings, but there's also antique metal work like door hinges and doorknobs and all these like intricate things complementing the different paintings. So I wanted to make like strange little pieces that could hang up complementing other artworks. That's kind of also where the button nymphs came from.
Cool. And kind of speaking on that, how do you deal with your unfinished work? I recently had a student that asked me, like, what do you do with your unfinished pieces? And I was like, oh, I don't
Yeah,
know. It's
they're
chaos.
sitting around here.
So I was
They're
like,
sitting
maybe
around in
another artist.
piles
Yeah.
everywhere. I have like, it's actually, it's crazy how many small piles I have all over the house. Well, mostly this is like my little workroom, and then I have like a pile city next to the couch also, which is
Right.
like some crochet piles. And it's better when I can see it and then I'll work on it. It's when it gets put in a basket that it's like a year goes by and then I pick it up and I'm like, I would like to finish this. Let me work on this for like this month, finish this project.
Yeah,
So,
totally. I am the same way. I need it up in
yeah.
the open. I just recently started putting them on the
Yeah.
wall just to be like,
That's
okay, you have
good.
to finish
Yeah.
these.
Definitely. And that's what I think also that's a good way of like using your space and not necessarily taking up floor space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's helpful for
Mhm.
people who are creative and they feel like they're expected to keep their space clean and like
Oh
put
my
away all
God.
their projects afterwards. It's like such a
Yeah.
rare.
It's challenging. Just general organization, I find to be tricky too, because I'm the same way with supplies, where I also want to see all my beads laid out. And then it's like they never get put away. They're just always out in the open. But yeah, I try not to be too hard on myself because then, I don't know, at least if it's all out, then you're kind of always practicing your art. And yeah, that's what I want to be doing.
Yeah, right.
Hmm.
And that's kind of what I want to be looking at, to be honest,
Yeah,
is seeing all my
true. Like no
materials.
one's coming over. It's so I may as well. Hmm.
Yeah. So you've been making these beaded quilts, which I guess is
Mm.
the best way I could describe
Oh
them.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, so I feel like last year I started I read a book about the weaving workshop at Bauhaus, that whole I want to call it a movement, but the textile and weaving workshop at Bauhaus, and that really inspired me, like Annie Albers and just I suppose more modern and graphic art. And also my mom is a quilter, so I've always just loved quilts and I like making quilts, but I never thought about using quilt as a subject matter with a different medium. So that's what I've been trying to do. And also some of the beading like pattern pieces is my way of using lots of very random beads that maybe there's like not a
Mhm.
large enough amount to do like a whole motif, like oh, a whole like beaded bunny. There's not enough of this brown shade for this bunny, so let me add it to a pattern in like a bead piece. But I have kind of put them on the back burner, and this is a shame, but it's just because like they haven't been selling as well, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to recalibrate with what's working in my shop, and I guess those are kind of more like a passion th project thing that if I sell enough in a week, then I'm like, oh, you can work on something a little more experimental. Yeah, I'm kind of trying to figure all that out because I think this year has been kind of tricky with the small business aspect
Yeah.
of it, of everything. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
It's like I didn't want to talk about the business until the end, but I do want to revisit that. I feel like you just, yeah, started on something that I do want to talk about.
Yeah, I have a
Yeah.
lot to say.
Yeah.
But I'm I'm very excited about trying different things, and I think it's also interesting to reflect like right now in being a working artist and like using social media, like everyone has to use social media, but maybe being in a place where you're known for a certain look of things,
Right.
being okay with trying something different, even though it maybe isn't working in the sense that the other stuff works, but it's working for you emotionally or creatively. And I
Yeah.
want to allow myself that, but yeah, it's I guess a balance I'm still trying to figure out. And then also give myself breaks because like my hand is hurting all the time.
Oh man. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I admire that about your work though, is that you do really experiment, even though you do have, the specific style. Like on
Mm,
Pinterest, it's always like, the very
thanks.
specific Tessa Perlow pieces that come up.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
mean, that's good too, though. Like, and I love
Yeah.
that about other artists and artwork, and I love that about your work too. I do love when it's like a world you enter. That is something I always want to or strive for. That's like, oh, this world of art that's like a whole, they're all connected, even if they're different.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I want to introduce some other elements into it too.
Yeah, like even seeing those almost like winged forms, but they have a bunch of different colors blended
Oh
together.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you describe those in your own work, but
Yes, I would group that also with my quilt pieces, even though they are kind of different. They're more like blooms.
yeah.
And I feel very influenced. My partner is also an artist and does more non-objective work. So I think maybe
Mm.
being surrounded by these shape landscapey things that remind you of things, but maybe aren't necessarily something, and that it's hard not to be influenced by that all around you. Those are kind of inspired by like the Wheel of Fortune, but in my way of kind of thinking, oh, how do I portray a wheel, but or like an energy wheel in a way that is like a flower or and also like use up some of my threads and organize my thread by color and yeah.
Yeah, I think they're really beautiful. They do have this sort of like floating energy of this sort of hard to describe.
Hmm.
I did an interview with someone the other day who used the word ineffable, and I was like,
Oh.
yes, I love that word. Like, this word that's describing a way that you can't describe something, but I feel like they have that feeling to them. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you mentioned you like to research magic in nature,
Hmm.
and I just wanted to get an idea of like I mean, I know I can tell by your work that you're not just like Googling like magic in nature. So for
Right.
anybody who's maybe a
I
little
mean,
bit like earlier on in their like research process,
yeah,
do you have any
no shade
guidance on
to
that?
that. Yeah, I mean, in the
Yeah.
beginning, that's probably what I did when I was
Right.
like 25 or whatever. I just
I
like
also feel
went
like
to
Google was
Google.
better 10 years ago.
That's true. That's a really
Whereas
good
now you're like,
point.
what is this? Yeah.
Truly, yeah, like now I don't because I
Yeah.
don't. I'm like, I'm nothing's gonna, they're not gonna give me what I'm looking for. But now I keep lots of lists. And if I'm interested in something, I do want to read about it or watch movies about it. If I listen to a certain podcast, like there was a podcast called Strange Magic about the tarot, and now it's in Between the Worlds. And I feel like they really inspired me because they were always bringing up references, like pop culture references, book references, just like quotes by poets or whatever. And then I'd like write it down as I was listening, go and watch the movie or go and find the book. But I used to Google a lot, like, what are books on witchcraft or books on the tarot, like the classic books on the tarot that will help you learn about the cards and then get them from the library or buy them from like thrift books. Yeah.
I love thrift books.
Me too. I need to keep myself from going too crazy on thrift books or A books or whatever because I could it's like that you buy there's one for $5. I may as well get $5 or something. Yeah, but I would think like my advice to people starting out is if you like something, especially like I really was drawn to alchemy art just visually. I was like, oh, it's so pretty and mysterious and what is this? This is so cool. And I think in the beginning, I probably would just like, oh, I see this and I'm going to do my own version of it. And then there was a point where I was like, if you're going to be making work about something or like the same subject matter, you should really learn about it because you don't want to just be making work about symbols and stuff that you don't know what they mean. So I think like yeah, if there's art that you're drawn to, learn about it or figure out maybe there's an artist you really love and then see what inspired them and then read about what they were inspired by or whatever movies that they were watching and yeah, that's kind of my method.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And how do you store all of the sort of like inspirations or different things that you want to research later? Like, how do you have a format, methods or
Yeah.
format for that?
I'm pretty analog and everything is in notebooks and
Yeah.
there's a lot of them and I have a rotation of like five tiny journal sketchbook like Moleskine. They have the like journal planners, but they have like tiny little sketchbook packs that you can get sometimes. So I'll get those. But sometimes, yeah, right now I'm at a place where they're kind of more filled up than and I'm not going back and referencing them and I would like to like stop what I'm doing, go back and look at old ideas and start working through some of those and like lists and stuff of things I want to research or books I want to read. They're mostly in notebooks and I am also like a Pinterest addict a bit. So
Right.
every morning I go on Pinterest and that's just kind of like soothing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I feel like sometimes it's like a better curated Instagram where Instagram's always trying to show me like
Ah,
weird trending
yeah.
stuff. And I'm like, I don't care about.
I know. Yeah, there's something really nice about just the visuals that speak to you and they're all right there. And yeah.
Yeah.
That's where
Do you have,
my, oh yeah.
no, go for it.
I also like use a lot of reference images for things, and they're usually all saved on Pinterest. But
Yeah, I feel like that's a really
hmm
important point because I think sometimes people are like, "Oh, I can't draw," or like, "How do I draw?" It's like you
hmm
almost all artists use a reference image. Like we're not just
Yeah.
inventing things off. It's like we're basing
No.
things off. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how I learned to draw also. Like that's how you'll become better. I don't think any drawing needs to be perfect, but for me, it's helpful to use a reference image.
Yeah, definitely.
hmm
Definitely. And maybe there are artists out here there who never use reference, but I'm sure at one point in their process they
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. Or
Yeah,
even like color references. I don't know. I think it's
right.
helpful.
Definitely. So
hmm
do you feel like when you're shifting between mediums, do you feel like your expression shifts at all, or is it?
Good question. I think I probably approach most mediums the same way, maybe to a fault. Where, like, for example, in my painting class, I definitely am approaching it as if I'm drawing because my work is very drawing based, I
Mhm.
suppose. And my teacher just wants me to relax and like hold the paintbrush like at like farther away. I'm not supposed to like hold it close up, be very close to the painting. And that's what I do because that just like makes sense to me or be more detail oriented. And the class is more so about just like it's a 3 hour class where you sit down and you have to paint a still life and look at the light and the shadow. And that's where you're starting with. And then like quickly blocking it in, not
Mhm.
worrying about details. It's like a practice sort of painting. And it's so hard for me not to just like stay in one spot of the painting and try to like finish a plum. Yeah. But I guess layout is pretty important to me, and that's maybe how I first approach anything that is like a larger piece. Because with hoops, it's kind of like just a little something, but with the larger pieces, I think layout is maybe what I am most keen on trying to establish, and then everything else kind of fits in. And even if I'm not sure about something, then that's when I like reference a notebook
Mhm.
for like filling in any gaps that need to be filled in.
Yeah, I think some of just to describe it for anybody who hasn't seen it, but like some of the
hmm
embroidered clothing that you've been doing, it's like this beautiful kind of collages of different embroidered elements
Mm,
around it, and then you've been trimming it sometimes with like a buttonhole stitch around the edges to really
yeah.
pull it together.
hmm
I just think those, how do you go about like collecting the
Mm.
sort of the grouping of images on those pieces?
Yes. So one thing I do will be saying, okay, I'm gonna make a shirt, I'm gonna embroider a shirt, and it's gonna be inspired on like a walk I go on, and then I'll go on a walk and whatever I see, then that's gonna be put on the shirt in some way or another. Sometimes I'll pick a tarot card, and then that kind of helps me decide what direction to go in. Sometimes I just have an idea, or I'm like, oh, seasonally. I want to work on something with deers on it or an owl or like the animals that kind of make me think about autumn. Yeah, but especially those pieces with a lot of elements to it. If I if I have one idea and I'm not sure what else to put on, I'll just flip through my notebooks. Be like, I haven't done that yet. I'm gonna put that on there. Haven't done this. I'll bring up Pinterest to be like, what flowers haven't I worked on in a while?
I love that. That suggestion of just working with your sketchbook and having it just this constant
hmm
source. I think it's really
hmm
powerful in that regard. So we see a lot of your reels where you're just drawing directly onto the garment.
hmm
And I love it because there's always like seven people who are like, "What pen are you using?" And it's like, "I'm
I
using a permanent
know.
micron."
Uh, no matter how many times I say what pen I'm using, I do anticipate having to always say what pen I'm using. And I have switched it up throughout the years though, because I used to just use a regular ballpoint pen. But now I'm not doing that for the clothes anymore because I think it's maybe more damaging or like non-archival, the way like
Oh,
a
right.
micron is permanent and not gonna deteriorate a fabric or anything. Not that I
Yeah.
think ballpoint pen will be that damaging, but
It's just best to
yeah.
keep things archival.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. hmm
totally, totally. So what do you ever like mess up when you're drawing with it, and how do you fix that?
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think there's this idea that it's always perfect every time.
I mean, well, so sometimes I just don't care, like with my line drawings. And if I'm planning a project that's going to be like a shirt with a bunch of symbols and motifs and I'm just going to embroider the outline of them, it is pretty regular that I will mess up and I just embroider my mess up spot too if it's not that bad. If it's like a double line around like the body of an animal or something like that, I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Um, and then sometimes with other stuff, well, with like embroidered hoops, if I'm working on like regardless of the size, because sometimes I'll do stuff that's more like simple little pieces that are great for selling in my shop. Sometimes I try to do larger pieces that are more artistic expressions that I'm excited about, but I will mess up drawing that and then I just flip the fabric around. And I'm like, okay, I just need to make sure that I'm embroidering a lot to cover up anything showing through. Like the quilt pieces are especially good for covering ground on like
Right.
a linen that is showing through drawing from the other side of the fabric. And then I will sometimes just draw over an old drawing and just draw bigger and then fill in the whole thing. And then sometimes I have to sacrifice a piece to like be scraps that get filled into a button nymph or something.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
What are some of your do you have any favorite tools that you kind of can't live without? I mean, I think our
Ooh.
tool belts are pretty
Mhm.
particular and small, but is there anything that you're just like,
Yeah. Ooh, good question. What have I been using a lot? I mean, I have my stuff I always have around is like my needles, my embroidery needles, my hoops, and like my little cutting tools. I mean, it's super handy to have the overhead thing to help with making like content, unfortunately, but that's like the reality
yeah.
of life, I guess, if you make things. What I really like, and I'll show you because I have it right here in front of me. I have a couple. This is like a whole other thing that I like to make, but a bead spinner has really been fun and useful for
Yeah.
like beaded flowers, for 3D beaded flowers, which I haven't done in a while, but I was doing a lot of those maybe a couple years ago. And I want to do some more and maybe try to experiment with a Christmas ornament design. I'm not sure
Cool.
what yet, but yeah, I love bead spinners. They kind of blew my mind when I first got them.
Yeah, I still
But
can't understand how they work. But
hmm
basically, just to
oh no,
explain to people,
yeah.
yeah, just to explain to people. So it's this little bowl and it just
hmm
spins around
Yeah,
and you
you
just hold your needle
hmm
up, right? Okay.
Yeah, well, I use it with like very thin wire and then you put a little
Mm.
hook on the wire, like you just fold the wire so that it's like a hook and then dip it in and when it's spinning, it'll just like fill the wire with beads and then you can kind of loop it and make flower petals. That's what I use it for at least.
Yeah, it's like pure magic, really, when you watch it
It
happening.
is. It's really cool. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else. I got an embroidery stand recently, but I haven't been using it. So that's not
Right.
a good, and I'm supposed to because I think it helps your posture a lot.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I'm not sure what other tools I have. But I recently got a punch needle and I'm kind of curious about trying that because that's like a different motion, but I
Yeah.
don't see why not applying that to my work also.
So you mentioned having like the wrist and the arm
Yeah.
issues. So I wanted to ask,
Yeah.
how did you deal with burnout? And I feel like that kind
hmm
of
Oh
is
yeah,
evidence of
they're
burnout.
totally
So
connected.
yeah.
And I'm very dramatic about it. So I keep bringing it up because I'm like, this shouldn't be happening to me. But it's like, this is exactly what happens when you are a bit of a workaholic. I feel like people used to ask me this all the time. And I'd be like, I'm fine. Nothing's ever gonna affect me. I can embroider all day. I'm fine. And now I'm like, oh God, like I need to take breaks. I need to figure something else out, use my sewing machine more, or just think of other projects to do. Um, yeah, and burnout is connected to it. And I definitely feel that. And it's like frustrating when I want to be working on things, but I feel like I can't. And then I don't know what to do with myself. And there's like the pressure of also needing to support yourself financially
Right.
wrapped
Yeah.
up in there. Um, but if I'm burnt out, my rules are like go on a nature walk because that is always really helpful and that's how I relax and just like clear my mind. Try to do that once a week, just generally if it's nice out. And also because I'm in a city now and I'm not really a city person, it's crucial to just like find a park and go on a walk and remember that there's trees
Yeah.
outside the city. Yeah, so I try to go on a nature walk. I definitely try to take time either every day or like at least once a week to spend time reading a book. And it doesn't have to be like a researchy book. It could just like, especially a fun fiction book, which maybe in the past I haven't always indulged in. Now I'm trying to do more so because it's just great and I
Yeah.
love reading. And I guess like watching movies, I don't know, helps me also with burnouts. It's good to just take a moment and stop and be like, you are more than your work. And burnout is just a symptom of like the systems we have to live in. And I
Mm.
need to remember that. And if I'm not feeling it, then I just need to like not try to work or work on
Mm.
something that is not tied up with my thoughts, something that's just kind of like a flower that I don't need to think about, that I've done maybe a million times, but it's easy and why not? You know, just if I want
Yeah.
to work, but I don't know what I want to work on, then that's when I do something like revisit something.
Yeah. I think it's good to have that time for your brain to just like sort of just unwind, really. It's like,
Yes, yeah, you need to take space from things because that's also like the magic of how ideas come. So that's you
right.
can even look at it as part of an essential element to creativity is like stopping. It's hard, but
Yeah.
that is like when a lot of cool ideas come if you just stop. Mhm.
Yeah, totally. I also feel, I don't know, I'm an Aquarius. I know you're an Aquarius. And I
Me
feel
too,
like,
yeah.
yeah, I feel like we like forget that we are physical beings in a physical body, in a
Mm,
physical world. And
totally.
to sometimes just like, okay,
Oh yeah, like
like the,
grounding.
yeah, like the idea of the
Hmm.
nature walk where I like, at any time I go on a walk, I'm like, oh, right.
Yeah, yeah. Getting out of
Oh,
one's mind.
yeah.
Yeah, I do relate to that.
Yeah. So I do want to ask you some questions about just running a business as a creative person.
Hmm.
So you've gone back and forth from Etsy to having your own
Yeah.
website and then back to Etsy.
Mm,
And I'm just curious, what has your experience been with like trying to,
yeah.
yeah, that whole move?
Oh, it's hard. I don't, honestly, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing a little bit with that, especially like, yeah, I had Etsy for a really long time. And in the beginning, it was just because I made too many things. And I thought, why not try to sell some stuff on Etsy? Like I must have been, I was either, I think I was like 18 when I first opened my Etsy shop. So I was definitely working other jobs, still in school, and just kind of had it there for if people wanted to buy things. And then through the years, like started a business and took it more seriously. So when I was able to go to Etsy full time, that worked really well. And then I feel like moving to Pennsylvania made it very stressful for me to figure out with what I wanted to do with my business. And I always wanted to try having my own website and selling off of it. But that was kind of linked to the assumption that it is easy enough to just promote myself on Instagram. So why do I don't need Etsy? Like I don't need that, I guess like the marketplace source where people can look up random embroidery and then stumble upon your work or discover you that way. Like, oh, I'll be fine. I have Instagram. I'll just promote myself. I want my own website. And then I feel like this may be correlated to Instagram becoming way more challenging to use as a means for promoting yourself because so much changes with them, with all the social media apps, but like especially Instagram in the past couple of years. It's just been very different. As far as like, so as far as that goes, the first year was really challenging to figure out if I wanted to keep doing that. I don't necessarily think Squarespace is harder than because I was using Squarespace. I think
Mm.
any website builder. They're probably all more or less similar, more or less the same price. Etsy also probably is around the same price too, when or even more expensive. I don't know. It seems very expensive when selling anything. They take a pretty large percentage, and there's like so much to Etsy right now that I'm like, this probably wasn't worth it. I don't know what the answer is. Um, but yeah, I'm back to Etsy. Long story short, I'm back on Etsy. After doing taxes last year, I decided like I think Etsy makes taxes easier for me
Mm.
because it's all in one place. And yeah, but now it's like dealing with them is kind of frustrating for me. And I feel like they gave me a report card yesterday that was like, you're not doing well right now as far as your answering messages to people. So you're
Oh
not a star
no.
seller. They have like their things where you're like, need to answer messages within 24 hours or you need to ship your thing. I might shipping is always on time and like having high reviews, I guess, and I'm pretty good there as well. But if I don't answer a DM or if I don't answer within 24 hours, I have like a 60% or something on there. And so my whole score is messed up. I'm like, why are you even grading me? Can't
Right.
I
And
just sell
also, it's like
here?
I'm an artist. I'm not
Uh,
running a full-time business with a
it's
customer service team behind it. So to expect that of an
Yeah.
artist, which is what artists are who created the platform in the first place.
It's not good. And I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure what to do about it necessarily, but I'm definitely thinking about it a lot. Like, what's going to be my approach, especially this time of year tends to be a better time for creators because the holidays are coming up. So I'm definitely like, how do I make this like a good end of the year? I think the answer or from the answer I'm giving myself is, well, I want to work on a lot of more affordable pieces, just generally. I think everyone is financially like
Yeah.
strained because of the world or the economy, I guess. And I want to do more in-person things. So I'm trying to find some pop-up opportunities locally, maybe even down the line, I want to try to reach out to shops and have pieces sold in local shops because yeah, I think just relying on Etsy is not working for me right now. And maybe down the line not having an Etsy, but for now it's what I have. So I'm sticking through with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you feel like, how do you manage the sort of the idea of like what we want to make as artists versus what we are actually selling
Yeah.
as like business people?
I'm okay with it because I'm happy to just make things generally.
Yeah.
I think, well, it depends, I guess, on the day because some days I'm like, well, if I'm gonna make stuff and it's gonna make my body feel tired, I really only want to make the things that I really want to make. I don't want to just like make any old thing. But the challenge is to make even smaller sellable things special or a special experience for
Mm.
me, and then that gets put into the art for the person who might want to buy it. Um, I think when I first started out, I would tell myself if I can make a certain amount of money in a week, then you can work on the projects that maybe aren't gonna sell, right? Or like are more indulgent. And then maybe there was a time period where I didn't have to worry as much about pushing myself to sell. Like embroidery was at its peak popularity and like it was easier. And Instagram was like worked really great too, algorithmically or whatever. And now I'm recalibrating because it's a bit harder. So I'm like, okay, go take a step back. Um, Either get a part-time job or go back to your rule where you have to work on pieces that you know will be more sellable. And then once you sell a certain amount, you can work on the more fun things. But it's really hard. I don't know how other people do it because I'm definitely trying to implement a schedule of like making a reel at least once a week and like slash TikTok or whatever. Um, making a YouTube video once a week. And those two both, they feel like so much work and you don't necessarily get an instant reward.
Right.
But it does feel essential too in some weird way. And I'm like, I don't know how other people do it, but I'm
Those
tired.
are, yeah, yeah. Those feel like long-term investments in your time, hopefully.
I hope so.
Like
I mean,
conceptually they do. Yeah.
yeah, I have fun making videos. So, and if it wasn't fun, I wouldn't do it.
Right.
But I definitely don't feel like I'm working smarter. And you know how people say work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
And I feel like I want to do that, but I always go like it's not my nature, I guess. I'm like making more work for myself, being like, make a YouTube video once a week. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but those are my approaches, I suppose. And then trying to take as much rest time that I can allow myself.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
So what do you share? What kind of videos are you sharing on YouTube?
Oh, a little bit of like projects. I'm doing some vlogs. Really, whatever I'm in the mood to do. I'm doing some tarot videos. I
Oh,
think
cool.
I've become someone who really enjoys watching YouTube and I feel inspired by other people's videos. And sometimes like inspiration videos are pretty fun to do as well. I
Mhm.
definitely have a lot of ideas, video ideas that in different notebooks and stuff. And but right now I'm just letting myself learn, I guess, how to do it and be more confident in making videos and like speaking to a camera by myself.
Yeah,
But
you do roll on your reels, but
oh, thanks. I mean, yeah, I don't
just as far as video editing goes.
yeah, I don't know. I guess I like the process videos definitely, especially for reels. I feel like I'm shy about anything else on Instagram. For Instagram, it's probably just going to be like a process reel, and I can't imagine doing any kind of video with me talking about stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, maybe one day I'll get better at that.
What do you think that is about YouTube and Instagram having these different sort of
Ah,
like feelings about them
I don't know.
and the
I don't
comfort level being
know.
different? Because I feel the same way, so I'm just
Hmm.
like curious.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel what's really strange because I feel like YouTube has a reputation of being way more like there's bullies on YouTube. Like you expect to get like weird comments or people trolling you a bit more, but I find it, and I don't really expect that from Instagram, even if I was gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna do something and I feel a little bit like I'm being cringy, but I'm gonna do it anyways. I think for the most part people are kind. But I think Instagram feels scarier to do that. I don't know why, but yeah. YouTube, I feel a little bit more like people already have a stigma with YouTube. So once you're already doing it, I'm like, I feel less embarrassed.
Right, maybe it is the location where it's just like this is
Yeah,
a space where people go expecting that, whereas Instagram has a different
definitely.
expectation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point because I think I go on YouTube and I'm down to like watch a random person just talk about stuff or go about their
Right.
day. It's so weird that that's like a fun thing to watch, but I'm definitely someone who indulges in watching videos like that and I like it. And on Instagram, maybe it's overstimulation because you're
Right.
getting it from a lot of people and you're not necessarily seeking out a specific person's content that you want to watch. It's just going to be like whoever's putting up stuff. So maybe
Right.
it's
And the
more
90
so
second time limit, maybe too. It
true,
doesn't allow you to go
true.
into depth.
Yeah. Hmm.
So it does feel more surface. Yeah. I'm just thinking out loud now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it all depends too, because there's definitely people I do really enjoy watching on Instagram, and I definitely like sharing that sort of thing to friends and I guess like comedy type videos.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting to give a lot of thought to, but it is like a reality.
Yeah. So you described one of the elements of like trying to make sure that you're still making work that you love as like me. I took a note that you said make it more special for both you and the person who's receiving
Mm-hmm.
it. So I would just love if you want to like go into detail on that at all, or just like
Mm.
how that I just love that little gem.
Well, I mean, I all of my work I do just choose what I want to make. I don't really do custom stuff, but I'll keep lists of ideas for like little hoops or shirts, and it's more special for me to think of like a meaning or like almost I like to say it's like a spell that I'm creating. What kind of spell would I want to make and what kind of symbols embody confidence and or healing or protection and make a list and designate like a certain attribute to a certain symbol and then that helps me get excited about it. And I feel like I'm putting magic into like a shirt or even just a little hoop, like, oh, I've never done a little monkey hoop, and that seems really playful. And that's like a fun energy to try to, um, like if I had that on my wall, I would think like, oh, be more like playful today if I looked and saw a little beaded monkey all the time. And often like, yeah, if I make a piece, we put all of our art everywhere because that's like a great way to store your pieces. Just
Yeah.
put it up on the wall. So what do I want to look at and think about or try to work on in myself? And then hopefully other people also feel that way looking at certain symbols or energies of a piece. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
comes through in the pieces too, even just
Hmm.
looking at them digitally. Cool. Well, one question I love to ask everybody is
Hmm.
how do we, just thinking about like us as artists creating the worlds we wish to live in, and how can we kind of work within that? Because I think we can oftentimes as artists just be like, oh, it doesn't mean anything or this or that, but I feel like
Hmm.
our art becomes so much more powerful on
Totally.
that. So yeah, do you have any thoughts on that?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, maybe even before the stage of making things in my everyday life, I want to see things in the everyday and be inspired by my personal life is pretty simple and like some would think mundane. I really like a simple life. I like going on my nature walks. I like walking around town. I like making things and I love noticing, I guess, just details and being delighted by nature and little things that you see. And so, me wanting to be inspired, I want to give that to other people too. The desire to see things in their everyday life and be inspired by them and enough to honor them with a lot of time being put into a little embroidery piece or a shirt that you want to make or wear. Like, I definitely also want to inspire people to want to make things too, I guess. And yeah, I want to create a world where people just appreciate their surroundings and see the magic in nature and see the magic in everyday life, sort
Yeah,
of.
I
Hmm.
think you use the word to honor the things that you see, those everyday things. I think
Hmm.
that's a really beautiful
Yeah.
to capture that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
can you share where people can find you, even though I'm sure everyone's
Oh.
found you, and I mean that in the best
You
way.
never know. I mean, my
Yeah.
Instagram is Tessa Perlow, and I do also have a TikTok that I try to upload on, which is also Tessa Perlow. Actually, all my things are Tessa Perlow, and I have a YouTube um, that's also Tessa Perlow, and my Etsy is Tessa Perlow Inc. So it's a little bit different, but I think those are all my most used places that I'm updating regularly.
Cool. I have to
Hmm.
check out your YouTube because it sounds really fun. Yeah. Awesome. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.